That's done.
And that's Dash.
And we're rolling bones.
We're here with another Talko Tuesday. My brain is so crammed full of board games and war games and skirmish games and now role-playing games. It's hard to keep up with it all.
Well, another element to that is the same thing that we run into and complain about often in our videos. I say complain. But the fact that no one has time to play everything.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we do that with this. Like, we want to play something, but then we start playing it and start doing stuff, and we want to move on to the next one. Because there's just so much out there. So it's easier just to, I would say, for me and RPGs, I probably won't play, I don't see myself playing that many RPGs outside of D&D. Maybe going back to Star Wars, potentially.
Star Wars. The D6 one?
The D6 one is my favorite.
Me too.
They're on the D20 right now with, like, D&D.
I don't even know where it is.
I know at one time they were.
So Fantasy Flight, I just remembered, if you're familiar with them,
yeah,
they've got the rights to the role-playing game right now, uses its own set of dice, its own system. I haven't played it, but I think it's pretty good for what it does.
Right. I miss the old D6 system.
Me too.
I really liked it with the wild die, the exploding wild die. That
it was great, wasn't it?
It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that system. But mostly that was the GLs. I mean, that was a GM, but we called it the GL.
The George Lucas. Yeah.
The guys running the game for me in that one, Bird for the two of us, like we played in that, and then Quinn in the other game that I played in, like that, they made it. They made that game a lot of fun. Just like my first introduction to GURPS and role-playing, well, actually not my first introduction to role-playing games, because I played a little bit of Ghostbusters, kind of homebrewed from someone that I don't know how well they knew the rules. I think they'd played with someone else, and then we were just playing it, and it just didn't... as a kid, I don't remember it making sense.
That Ghostbusters system, I think, was based on the same system that D6 Star Wars used.
All right. And then I played a Blade Runner game that was based in Warhammer, in the Warhammer world.
Okay.
And this is back with Rogue Trader, the first book that came out, and used that system.
Okay.
Which, fun for what it was, but terrible system to play anything in. Sorry if you liked that.
Liked it.
Second edition Warhammer was when Warhammer came to be a good... started morphing into what it is. But anyway... but then my first real getting into role-playing games and stuff like that was GURPS with Master Burston.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened to be when I started doing that stuff, he had got me reading The Wheel of Time, and the first campaign that I played was a Wheel of Time game, or Wheel of Time campaign, and it was, I don't remember who else was playing, but I know you and I were playing. And that one got me into the Wheel of Time and made that a lot more fun. And it made GURPS just come to life and be a lot more fun for me too. Like it was, so that was my first real getting into RPGs. And a lot of fun with that. Like those days, I remember playing out in the trailer with candles and stuff like that. And,
freezing.
Or
sweating. Just depends on what time of year it was.
So those were some really good times. Edvilson.
Yeah. Bird was there.
Bird never got as much into GURPS though.
No, he called it the Devil's Game.
Yep. And Magic.
And Magic. So not because he really believed that. It was just anything that wasn't Star Wars was the Devil's Game because it detracted from Star Wars.
At junior high, high school age of doing this stuff was a lot of fun. I mean, again, no responsibilities. I mean, we had families that, you know, had us doing stuff and we thought got in the way of stuff, but nothing like being an adult gets in the way of doing stuff. But just a lot of fun. Like, overall, if you have any, like, desire to get into any of this stuff, look into it, find a good group to play with, and that does have something to do with your enjoyment to it. If you've played with a group and not enjoyed it, Doesn't mean you won't like it. Sometimes playing with the right group makes the difference.
Yeah, it does. It helps. I've had a couple groups that we only played once or twice, and there's reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't fun, and so nobody really tried to get back together, and it's okay.
But in the same vein, these aren't for everybody. If you don't want to, don't. We're not saying you have to try it. No. You have to do it. Not everybody enjoys it, but I do. I love it, and I think in the end, if I had to choose between RPG and my tabletop games, I would choose an RPG in the end. If I could only play one. If I could only play one type of game, I would choose the RPG over the tabletop games.
And the tabletop games are great.
Spend more time playing them.
Yeah. And my hobby consists almost entirely of working with these tabletop games. But there's a small portion that I put into this, which should tell you something about how easy the time investment you need to get started with something like D&D. It's not a lot.
Plus the RPG element to it is, like I said, a more social element. It's a thing to get together and do. Whereas with war games and stuff like that, usually most war games, it's just 2, maybe 3 or 4 people.
It's always competitive.
Yeah, with pen and paper RPGs, it is. I say I don't like to go above 5 people. When I'm running a game, just to make sure people have their time. But I know DMs that like to have the more the merrier. Mm-hmm. And again, that comes down to the right players, the right thing. I get, as a player and someone running the game, I get a little annoyed when there's too much distraction, which happens the more people you have. Mm-hmm. Or you go sit down to play a game, and because there's so many people doing their own thing, you get your own thing. Or you get left out of it. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of other RPGs that I actually have played.
Good question. Call of Cthulhu, and it was a percentage type system. I didn't fully understand it, but all of our skills were based on, they had percentage scores, and you'd roll percentage dice, which reminds me, Marvel.
Oh yeah, Marvel.
The old Marvel system.
And then playing with Carrasco and playing those games, that's where I got introduced to World of Darkness in the GURPS format.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. I have to say, Carrasco running World of Darkness, some of my best memories of stuff.
Me too.
And I remember my first character was what we call a pre-made character. I was just coming to play, and they had a character there that I could play with, Stalker. Mm-hmm. And Stalker became, I loved him. He was a lot of fun. And that's the thing that goes to say, sometimes a character that you don't even make and you don't plan can be one of the best characters that you have. Mm-hmm. One of the most memorable characters that you'll ever play. So I like to do that sometimes in games, do pre-made characters.
I was playing in Carcass's vampire campaign, his World of Darkness, and this was my first experience with that. And I'll tell you, almost every aspect of this was just a fun journey for me, because this world was so big and there was so much to learn about it, and I loved that. I wanted that in a campaign for so long, and finally I got that because there was all this material out there that I could go and look at and read.
So much.
Yeah, I remember going and buying this little flavor book for the game. It was called the Book of Nod, and it had all these little passages about the vampires from thousands of years ago, and I was just taken with it. I loved it. And my character, he had this tragic origin story, and the gal that turned him into a vampire, she had died, and we didn't have a romantic connection, but I liked her. You know, I had this connection to her, and then she was gone. And my guy, who was part of the Gangrel clan, if you're familiar with the clans at all, that's what he was.
Is this Jesper?
This is Jesper Schuler. So Jesper just had this crazy story, and I remember learning I grew my disciplines, and I had this one moment where it's the only time I've really enjoyed combat with another player. But this player was going to kill one of my friends that I was with. and my character has this gentleman's code of honor, so I couldn't let her be insulted or hurt by this other player. And I didn't know this other player was a werewolf, at least in game I didn't. And so I stood up for her. Well, that pissed him off. And so he turned into a werewolf, and I thought, well, here's the end of my character. I knocked him out and killed him then. It was crazy. And then this same character goes on, and I got captured by this Tzimisce vampire.
Which is another clan.
Another clan, yeah. Yep. And so this vampire, he was twisted and evil. And so he had me captive, and I had this sword that was bonded to me, and he was trying to take it away. So I managed to grab the sword, and he got the sword from me, and he actually used it on me, and he stabbed me right in the heart, and that should have been the death of me. The GM allowed a health roll. I got a critical success. Instead of dying, I lost my vampirism. And so now I'm a human. And I can use these powers, though. If I drink vampire blood, I can use these powers that I could use as a vampire. And I remember all these vampires coming after me because they wanted the secret to being a human. And I remember just spending so much time just trying to get away from it all, never being successful. It followed me wherever I went.
And see, that's the Schuler that I played with.
Yeah.
When I played, Schuler had become
a human,
and people were after him.
Yep. So that all happened during play, and it wasn't meant to be. It's just the way it went.
Yeah.
And
that's
a lot of fun.
That's one of the things that lends itself to these games and the storytelling aspect of things. That things go even well. Let me backtrack a little bit. In my opinion, for me, when I'm running games and when I'm playing in a game, sometimes the most enjoyable things and the things that are just the most memorable are the things that no one planned on.
Mm-hmm.
The things that didn't have the person running the game had no clue that this was where this angle was going to go and what things were going to happen, and the players didn't have any idea. So Schuler living through that fight and becoming human or potentially reaching Golconda, if that's what which was what the vampires thought and what they were looking for. Becoming that wasn't something that I don't think Carcass had that planned in any way. And so, but that became a driving force in things. And that type of stuff is what makes a lot of the stuff fun for me. Mm-hmm. Like, especially as running the game, those are the things that I enjoy when players do something surprising and I have to think of something. I have to go back and say, oftentimes when I pull something out from a game in the past, it is one of Carcass's characters that I pull out. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of stuff there that I pull out and use in game from Carcass running the games.
I've got one of Hefe's characters. I'll pull her into a lot of games. Her name's Gwenarin. She was an elf that ranger character I talked about before. He fell in love with her, and then actually that's why I had the duel with the other elf. It was kind of over her. I was trying to become a part of the elf culture, and I failed miserably. It's such a tragic story, but Gwenarin makes it into my campaigns.
There's a lot of good Hefe campaigns too.
There are.
The one with one of the ones that I remember is you were Paragon? Yeah. Yeah.
It was a fantasy.
Yeah, and I was cool and I was a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so hard because I was your friend.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't a bad guy. I was greedy. And in D&D, in GURPS, you have a disadvantage. You get points to spend on your character to make them tougher by taking disadvantages. Well, I took the disadvantage greed, and the GM used it to my disadvantage a lot. Rightfully so, and it made the game what it was. It was a lot of fun, but like they would offer me money and stuff to betray Paragon, and I would give in every time, and then I would try and find a way to renege on my deal at the last minute, but not renege on it, so that they couldn't come after me for like not doing what I was supposed to. In the end, they did, but I would try and like save the situation without Paragon knowing that I was the one selling him down the river every time. But that was a lot of fun. Playing games like this are a little more. You create more memories.
You do, because you have this. For me, anyways, it's this aspect of the adventure happening behind it. So it's not just a good time with my friends, it's an adventure I'm having with my friends, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, yeah. And then Dunn has run some games that have been a lot of fun. I have some nieces and nephews that remember doing a Star Wars game that we never finished. Last time I'm aware that we had everybody out here, we got together and played a little game with me, you, Bird, and Master Burston. I don't even remember what we played, but we had fun.
I remember playing Ghostbusters 20 plus years ago, and I don't even remember what we were doing exactly. I just remember laughing so hard and having a great time. We pushed somebody out of the car as we were driving down the road, so that comes to mind. It's just stupid things like that. There's another scene where I remember I was in this group of ghosts in the middle of the street, and they all started singing the Muppets theme song, and I had to find that tune. And I remember trying to remember. This was before the internet was on our phones or anything, so I was trying my best just to remember it, or asking people around me if they could come up with it. And that was a fun night.
At some point, there are lots of people that want to try their hand at running a game. And I think most people can run a game. As long as they'll learn the rules enough to run things, like to be able to handle situations, then they can run a game. Because I really enjoy the world building and doing stuff like that. Like, it's a lot of fun. But being a player can be a lot of fun, and a lot of there were times when that's all I wanted to do. My niece Aline, they kept wanting me to run a Harry Potter GURPS, and the problem for me is they knew Harry Potter, I didn't. I was like, I'm sorry, like that to me, every instance of that where you're playing in a game, whoever's running the game is running a game in a world that other people know better than them. There's gonna be not some happy situations.
Yeah.
It's going to be frustrating. So I convinced her to run the game, and I kind of helped her a little bit with stuff because it was her first time, but she did a phenomenal job. We had a lot of fun. It was great. Her husband Brandon, he runs some GURPS for us now and actually D&D as well. He runs some D&D, but he does a great job with when he's running stuff. When he reads stuff, learns stuff, like he knows it. Like reading through board game rules, he understands them better than most people. And the first time reading through, where like I have to play through and get stuff and figure it out, so that part of stuff, he understands the technical part of like running a game really well, and he draws on experience and on stuff, and he makes a good story. Like, and I have a lot of fun with it. I feel bad, the last one we played with him, he had some like fun stuff planned for us and stuff like that, but we ran out of time, partly because we had a big group and a lot of new people. But I know there was a lot of stuff we missed, and I did something that in the game that I know is potentially frustrating for people running the game. I was a player that left the party, and
split the party.
Yeah, I know that he had to rush through a lot of stuff because of time stuff. We still got to finish the game. It was a lot of fun, and it was a horror setting, so a lot of fun there. Horror ones can be a lot of fun, and that one was good. But I feel like anybody can run a game as long as they're willing to learn and do their stuff.
Yeah.
And if players are willing to bend their imagination to the situation. One of the last major campaigns I ran a conglomeration of World of Darkness and the lore from the Iron Druid Chronicles. They fit well together. Have to fudge a few things in there to make it work, but I also put it in Deadwood, the TV show, but I changed it to Colorado and changed some things. But all the NPCs were exactly like they were in the not exactly. They were based off what they were in the story or in the TV show, which made it easier for me because they all had their personalities already there. Everything was done. I knew how they would react to situations, and which for me is the biggest part of building NPCs and building a world is having to do that stuff and find out how all of these characters will react and do stuff.
The Lazy Dungeon Master suggests you do stuff like that, where you base a character on something you're already familiar with, and so then you don't need to flesh out this entirely new personality. You just write a key word on the your little card, and you know who that person is.
So, and the way that I do my world building is Excel, and I will have my NPCs listed down there and have their names there, and I will usually just have one word for their personality. And then I will have a, not necessarily a skill, but an area of where their skills are based and what they primarily do. So it doesn't have to be like,
Specific
wouldn't be
skills.
lock picking, but it might be thief. And then I have a skill level. So in groups you use a skill level, and so I'll have the skill level there, and that's basically if I'm rolling for them to do their stuff in that. And that's basically the character. Now in other stuff I just give them their average stuff. And I may have a low spot where they are not proficient.
Yeah.
And I can go through and make a big list of characters that way and where they're related, and then when people meet them and go in through that, they and deal with them, then I've already got that stuff there. But oftentimes there's a lot of people that they don't even touch on, don't even run into. And as they run into that quirky character that I had no thoughts on making, and I add him to the sheet, and they just, that's who they clomb on, that's who they like attach themselves to and have to do stuff like, in one of the other campaigns I just recently ran, they were at a school, and a teacher, they were looking for a certain type of teacher, and I didn't have one made, and so I made this one, and that was the one that one of the players like attached themselves to and was always dealing with. And so again, you just need to be, that's one of the things I enjoy, is having to think on my toes.
Anything else? I can't think of anything else. But thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks. See you next time.